I didn't notice the fog at first. Not really. It had always been there, lurking at the far ends of the streets, pooling in the alleyways, clinging to the river like a second skin. Mostly harmless, mostly ignorable. The kind of thing you grew used to if you lived in this city long enough. People would joke about it, call it a trademark of our little corner of nowhere. A quirk of the landscape. Something geological, meteorological, nothing more. But that was before the fog began creeping closer. Before it seeped into our doorways. Before it wrapped itself around us like damp fingers and whispered things we couldn't bear to admit we heard. Before the eyes. I still remember the first night I sensed them, not saw, sensed. The difference matters. When something is watching you, truly watching you, your body reacts long before your mind catches up. My skin prickled as if a cold breath had brushed the back of my neck. My pulse jumped, sharp and instinctive. I turned around, expecting to see someone standing there, too close, maybe waiting for me to pass, so they could slip a hand into my pocket or worse. But there was no one, only fog, a wall of it, rising like smoke made solid, swallowing the far end of the street. It churned in slow, thoughtful swirls, like it had weight, like it had purpose. Street lamps fractured as their beams fought to cut through it, each halo of light dimming into the gray until it dissolved entirely. I tried to laugh it off, told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was tired, that I had been working too late again, that the cold had wormed its way inside my coat and was tricking my nerves into firing at nothing. Still, I walked faster, but the sensation followed me all the way home. And when I finally shut the door behind me, slamming it harder than I meant to, leaning against it for balance, I knew something was wrong. Not with me, not with my imagination, with the city. The next morning, I hoped daylight would make everything feel normal again. Didn't. The fog didn't burn off like it usually did. It lingered, thick as cotton pulled apart and left drifting in the air. I could see only a few doors down the street before everything disappeared into a colorless abyss. It looked like someone had taken an eraser to the edges of the world. I wasn't the only one who noticed. My neighbor, Mrs. Fairchild, stood on her porch in a pale blue robe, clutching the railing with thin, shaking fingers. Her eyes darted along the street like she was counting something that wasn't there. When our gazes met, she startled. "Do you hear them too?" she whispered. The question chilled me. Hear who? She pressed a hand to her chest, as though trying to keep her heart from leaping out. "The whispers," she breathed. "They were in my home last night." I told myself she was just old, lonely, fragile, the type to scare easily. But the fear in her gaze was too real, too sharp around the edges. It wasn't the vague unease of a bad dream. It was recognition. I wanted to ask her more, to push past the knot tightening in my stomach and demand she tell me exactly what she'd heard. But before I could speak, she gasped and retreated a step, staring past my shoulder toward the street. I turned. The fog had moved. It hadn't been moving a moment ago. Of that I was sure. But now it had crept several feet closer, rolling like a tide. And in the center of it, no, not possible, not real. I blinked once, then again, hard enough to hurt. For a fraction of a second, so brief I could have sworn it was a trick of the light, I saw something shift inside the fog. A shape, the outline of something tall, too tall to be human, with limbs like long shadows bending at unnatural angles. And eyes, two of them, wide, glossy, unblinking. They glowed faintly, a sickly pale luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. Then the figure sank back into the mist, dissolving in a swirl of gray. When I turned back to Mrs. Fairchild, she was already inside her house. Her door slammed shut hard enough to reverberate through my bones. I stood there a long moment, trying to steady my breath, trying to convince myself I was imagining things, that it was just a hallucination brought on by sleepless nights and stress and the strange heaviness of the morning. But somewhere deep inside me, somewhere primitive, instinctive, older than language, I knew it had been real. The fog had eyes, and it was watching us. The city didn't slow down, even though everyone could feel something was wrong. Buses still ran. Children still trudged to school with oversized backpacks. Cafes still opened at dawn, their windows glowing warm in the gray. People clung to routine like it could protect them, like normalcy was a shield. But conversations were quieter. Faces were drawn. Everyone glanced over their shoulders more than they used to, and no one lingered outdoors after dusk. I work at a small print shop near the river. The kind that smells like ink soaked into old wood like paper. Dust floating through sunbeams. Normally, I like it. There is something grounding about working with tangible objects. Pages you can hold, letters that leave stains on your fingers. But that day, every sound was too sharp. Every creak of the floorboards, every hiss of the aging printer made my nerves jump. The fog pressed against the front windows like a living thing. It left droplets on the glass, but they didn't slide down the way condensation should. They clung there, trembling, vibrating, like something was humming inside the mist. My coworker, Jonah, noticed it too. He kept glancing toward the windows, tapping his fingers against the counter with restless, uneven rhythm. "You hear that?" he muttered. "Hear what?" He shook his head. "Maybe it's nothing. Just weird interference or something." Interference from what? He didn't answer. He chewed his lip, eyes fixed on the fog. Normally, Jonah is annoyingly upbeat. One of those people who whistles while working, who narrates the most mundane tasks like he's the protagonist of his own radio show. Seeing him so unsettled made my stomach knot. "Do you think we should close early?" I asked. He didn't laugh, didn't make a joke, just nodded. Yeah, maybe that's best." But before either of us could start putting things away, we heard a sound. Not loud, not obvious. A whisper. It drifted from the back room. Soft, hushed, like someone was standing just beyond the doorway murmuring a secret meant only for themselves. I froze. Jonah's fingers stilled on the counter. We stared at each other. "You heard that, right?" I whispered. He swallowed. "Yeah." Another whisper followed. This one sharper. Closer. I stepped back, pulse hammering in my throat. Jonah grabbed a metal ruler from the desk like it could be used as a weapon. His hand shaking so badly I could hear the ruler clatter against itself. Then the whispering stopped. Just ended. Like someone had clicked a switch. Silence filled the shop again, heavy and wrong. Jonah forced a laugh that broke halfway. "Probably just the vents," he said, voice cracking. "You know how old this place is." But we both knew it wasn't the vents. I packed my things faster than I ever had before. Jonah didn't even wait for me to lock the door. He practically ran out the moment I flicked the lights off. Outside, the fog swallowed him before he made it to the bus stop. I lingered a moment, staring into the gray, listening. Nothing, yet everything. The fog seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. I pulled my coat tighter around me and hurried home. That night, the whispers came for me. I woke to darkness so thick it felt like my room had been buried underground. My throat was dry, my tongue sticking to the roof of my mouth. For a moment, I didn't know what had woken me. Then I heard it. A breath. Not mine. It came from the foot of the bed, slow, uneven, wet. I stayed perfectly still, every muscle stiff with terror. My eyes strained to adjust, but there was no shape, no silhouette, nothing I could focus on. Only the sense of something there, something watching me. Then came the whisper. It slithered across the blankets like a strand of cold silk. "I see you." I jerked upright, heart exploding in my chest. My back hit the headboard, wood rattling under the impact. "Who's there?" I gasped. No answer, only a faint shifting, like cloth dragging across the floorboards. I scrambled for the lamp. My fingers trembled so violently I knocked it over twice before I managed to flick the switch. Light flooded the room, and there was nothing.
No intruder. No shadow.
No sign of movement. But the window was open. I had locked it before bed. I was certain of it. I lived alone. I always checked the windows. Always. Yet there it was now, gaping open, fog curling through the gap like fingers stretching toward me. My breath hitched. The fog drifted deeper into the room, tendrils forming delicate, swirling patterns in the lamplight. And for just a moment, just long enough to shatter every lie I had told myself, I saw eyes open within it. 4, 6, 8. Too many. They blinked in perfect unison, like a single creature wearing multiple faces. I stumbled off the bed, nearly tripping over the sheets as I bolted across the room. I slammed the window shut, heart pounding so wildly the glass vibrated under my grip. The fog withdrew slowly, reluctantly, like something pulling away from a meal it hadn't finished eating. Then it vanished into the night. I didn't sleep again. I sat there in the lamplight with my back pressed against the wall, listening to the faintest whisper of movement beyond the glass. Something was out there. Something that knew where I lived. Something that could get inside. Something that wanted me to know it could. And for the first time in my life, I wished I lived anywhere but this city. Anywhere the fog wasn't alive. When I stepped outside the next morning, I wasn't prepared for what I found. There were footprints in the fog. Not in the dirt. Not in the pavement. In the fog itself. Swirling impressions suspended midair, as though someone had walked through the mist and left their weight embedded in it. The shapes were elongated, stretched, tapering into points like talons. They weren't human. They weren't even close. And they led straight to my door. The prints hung suspended like ghosts of steps taken by something that didn't belong in this world. They curved slightly inward toward my door, as if the creature had turned to face it, lingered, perhaps even pressed close enough to feel the temperature difference on the other side. And then it left, or dissolved, or sank back into the fog that birthed it. My breath fogged in front of me, though the air wasn't cold. I lifted a hand toward one of the hovering prints. My fingers trembled, each muscle protesting. But I needed to know, needed to feel whether they were real. My palm hovered inches from the nearest impression. The fog suddenly rippled. I jerked my hand back so quickly I stumbled. The print shuddered like something beneath it had moved. I backed away from the door until my spine pressed against the wooden frame. The street felt too quiet, too hollow, like sound itself didn't dare trespass. A distant door slammed somewhere down the block, and the fog swallowed the noise almost instantly.
No echoes. No resonance.
It was as if the world was being muffled. Or watched. Mrs. Fairchild's curtains twitched. I saw her gray curls, her wrinkled hand gripping the fabric. When she realized I'd seen her, she disappeared behind the curtain like a startled animal. I wanted to go to her, ask what she knew, ask if she'd seen these prints too, ask what the whispering had said to her. But fear pinned me in place. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly screamed. I tore it out of my pocket and checked the notification. A message from Jonah. "Are you home?" I typed back quickly. "Yeah. Something weird is happening. You need to see these footprints." 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared, then nothing. I stared at the screen. "Jonah?" I whispered aloud, as if saying his name would make the message come through. A chill crawled up my spine. I pocketed the phone and forced myself to move, to step around the prints, to head down the sidewalk. I needed, desperately, to be around another human being, to ground myself in normalcy, even if normalcy was rapidly dissolving. The fog clung to my legs as I walked. It coiled around my ankles like something testing the shape of me. Halfway down the street, I felt something behind me. Not heard. Felt. The air shifted subtly but unmistakably. I didn't want to turn around. But the human mind is wired to face its fears, even when doing so kills us. Slowly, heart-pounding, I turned. The footprints were gone. All of them. I stared at the empty fog, throat dry. The prints hadn't faded gradually, they had vanished instantly, as though erased. As though someone knew I had seen them and decided I shouldn't anymore. The fog wound upward like slow smoke, thickening, coiling into itself. I walked faster, then faster still. Soon I was almost running. And by the time I reached the print shop, my nerves were stretched so thin they hummed. I pushed open the door, expecting to see Jonah at the counter, making some sarcastic remark about me hurrying like I owed him money. But the shop was dark. The lights were off even though it wasn't closing time. And the smell, God, the smell. It wasn't the familiar ink and paper aroma I'd grown used to. It was something metallic, something wet, something like the air of a neglected basement. Jonah? I called. My voice sounded swallowed, muted. I stepped inside, letting the door fall closed behind me. The fog pressed against the windows from the outside, thick enough that almost no daylight seeped through. The space felt foreign, unfamiliar in the dimness, like it had become a different place entirely overnight. I reached for the light switch. Before my fingers touched the wall, I heard it. A small sound, a breath, not mine. A soft, tremulous inhale from somewhere deeper inside the shop. My lungs froze. Jonah? I whispered again, but this time the name didn't sound hopeful. It sounded like a prayer. Another sound followed. A shuffle, a scrape, something dragging, very slowly. The back room, the same place where we'd heard the whispers yesterday. Okay, I murmured under my breath. Okay, okay. I wasn't sure whether I was trying to summon courage or suppress the shaking in my legs. I reached for the chain dangling from the ceiling lamp above the front counter. I pulled. Click. Light flooded the room. I froze. On the floor, smearing across the wooden boards, was a trail of black residue. Thick, oily. It was smeared in long strokes, like something had been dragged across the floor. Something large. My heart pounded in my ears as I inched toward the trail. The smell grew stronger, rot laced with a sour tang I couldn't identify. The trail led straight to the back room door. I swallowed. Jonah? I said again, barely a whisper now. Silence. Just the lingering hum of the flickering ceiling light. My hand moved toward the back room door handle. Paused. Shook. Then closed around it. I twisted. The door creaked open. The room was dark except for the faint outline of the printing machines. The air felt heavier in here, thicker, like I was pushing through invisible water. I fumbled along the wall for the light, found the switch, flicked. The room exploded into brightness, and I sucked in a sharp breath. The machines were coated in the same black residue, streaked across the metal like something had grasped them with slick fingers. Papers were scattered everywhere, stained, warped, dissolving at the edges like acid had touched them. There was something else, too. On the far wall, smeared in the same black substance, was a message. A single word. Run. My breath hitched. The hairs on my arms rose. My body reacted before my brain could process anything. I stepped backward and collided with something behind me. I screamed, spun around. My elbow struck something soft. Oh God! Hey, it's me! A voice exclaimed. My vision snapped into focus. It was Jonah, alive, shaking, his clothes soaked with some of the same black residue. His face pale, eyes wide with stark terror. He grabbed my arm with trembling fingers. Don't go in there, he gasped, pulling me away from the doorway. You don't understand. You don't understand what's happening. What is that stuff? I stammered, pointing toward the residue. He shook his head violently. Not now. We need to leave. We need to get out of the shop now. He practically dragged me toward the front door. I didn't resist. His hands were ice cold. As we stumbled outside, the fog seemed to draw back from him like it recoiled, like it recognized him, or feared him. He didn't slow down until we reached the middle of the street. He bent forward, bracing his hands on his knees, panting. What happened to you? I asked, trying to steady my own breathing. He didn't answer immediately. He rubbed his forehead with shaking hands. It was in the shop, he whispered. What was? The thing in the fog. A chill locked around my spine. He swallowed, turning toward me. His voice cracked. I tried to close early yesterday. You left and I went to shut things down. The fog outside, it pressed against the window, like it wanted in. His breathing grew faster. Then I heard something inside the shop. The same whispers we heard, but louder, like they were coming from everywhere at once. I didn't speak. Couldn't. His next words came out broken. It said my name. The world dropped out from under me. I went into the back room, he continued, voice trembling uncontrollably. But I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have gone in there alone. Something was there. I didn't see it clearly, only its shape, just the outline. Tall, wrong. His eyes filled with tears, he tried to blink away. And the eyes? God! The eyes! He broke off, gripping his shirt like he was trying to keep himself from shaking apart. I forced air into my lungs. Why didn't you tell me then? Why didn't you call? He laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Call? You think phones work when that thing is near? Touched me, just brushed against me, and everything went dark. I don't even remember leaving the shop. I woke up on the floor this morning covered in that. He gestured to the black residue staining his shirt. Stuff. Why come back? I didn't. His voice cracked. I think it brought me back. The fog swirled at the edge of the street, like it was listening, watching. I felt a cold pressure settle against the back of my skull. Presence. The same one I'd felt last night. Jonah grabbed my shoulders, pulling me closer. We need to leave the city. I stared at him. He was serious, terrified, and for the first time since all this began, the idea didn't sound ridiculous. Maybe it was the only rational thing left. I opened my mouth to speak, when the fog behind Jonah thickened rapidly, like something was pushing through it, like some enormous shape was stepping forward. His eyes widened. He saw it too. Don't move, I whispered. He nodded, breath trembling. But the fog rippled hard. A shape stepped closer. Tall, slender, limbs bending at those awful angles. Eyes opening inside the mist. 2, 4, 6. Too many. Jonah whimpered. Everything inside me screamed run, just like the message on the wall. But my legs were frozen. The creature moved closer. The fog tightened around us, and the eyes, all of them, focused directly on me. Jonah grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt, but I didn't pull away. Couldn't. The creature's presence pinned every thought, every impulse, every instinct beneath a crushing weight of dread that felt older than language. Fog curled around its limbs as it lurched forward, each movement accompanied by a faint cracking sound, as though bones were rearranging themselves with every step. Its body was a silhouette stitched together from shadows and smoke, its edges dissolving and reforming with each breath the fog took. And the eyes, God, the eyes weren't set in a face so much as suspended within the mist. They hovered in patterns that shifted, blinked, merged, separated. Jonah's grip tightened. The creature cocked its head, or what resembled a head. The motion was too fluid, too smooth, like water obeying a command. Then it whispered, not out loud, not through the air, inside us. Don't run. The voice wasn't a voice. It was sensation, pressure, a thin cold blade sliding between the folds of my thoughts. Jonah let out a strangled sound, half a sob, half a gasp. It's in my mind, he choked. He didn't finish. The creature stepped closer. The fog swirled around its limbs in spirals, tightening like coils of smoke, wrapping a body they worshipped. Couldn't breathe. Jonah dragged me backward, feet slipping on the slick pavement. The fog shifted, swirling with anticipation. The creature blinked all of its eyes at once, and the streetlights went out. Every single one. The city plunged into darkness so abrupt it stole the breath from my lungs. Jonah screamed my name, voice cracking. Something rushed past us. A rush of cold, a pressure like the air collapsing inward. I didn't think. I ran. I didn't know if Jonah was beside me. I didn't know where I was going. The fog swallowed every direction, every sound, every scrap of sense. My feet slammed against the pavement as I sprinted blindly through the thickening haze. Behind me something moved, not the fog. Inside it, something with weight, something that made the pavement tremble. Jonah! I shouted, coughing as the mist filled my throat. No answer. I ran harder. A shape darted on my left. A tall, thin silhouette barely visible through the thick gray. It moved with me, kept pace. Another shape appeared on my right. Then behind me, they weren't the same creature. There were more. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Their eyes opened like a constellation swirling inside the fog. The whispering began, soft, layered, overlapping. Voices threading through my skull, through my bones. Come back. We see you. We know you. You belong. You belong to us. My legs nearly buckled. A sob tore from my throat.
No, iwisparat.
No, no, no. But the voices only grew louder. We've been waiting. I slammed into something solid. A wall. Cold bricks scraped my palms as I steadied myself. The alley was narrow, cloaked in fog so dense it felt suffocating. But the walls gave me bearings, gave me something real to cling to. I pressed my back against the brick and slid down until I was crouching. My breath came in harsh, ragged bursts. The fog in the alley was moving, not drifting, coiling, gathering. I closed my eyes, squeezing them so tight spots burst behind the lids. Please, I whispered. Please stop. For a moment, everything grew still. I opened my eyes. A figure stood at the mouth of the alley. Just a silhouette, barely visible through the dense fog. Taller than any human. Lanky limbs swaying with a gentle, unsettling rhythm. Eyes like embers flickering in the dark. It didn't move toward me. It didn't need to. The fog around it pulsed, expanding in slow waves. And then it spoke again. You've seen too much. You've heard too much. You cannot leave now. I pushed myself to my feet, hands slipping on the damp wall. Terror drove my limbs like electric current. I'm not staying, I hissed. The creature's eyes blinked, slow, deliberate. You already are. The alley behind me brightened, just faintly. A light, a human light.
Ispun.
A door stood partway open, a warm glow spilling out onto the pavement. I didn't hesitate. I lunged toward it. The fog snapped behind me like a breaking wave. The whispering surged, harsh, urgent. Don't leave us. I grabbed the doorframe, shoved myself through, and slammed the door shut behind me with all the strength I could muster. The whispering hit the door like wind, faint but furious. Then silence. Not complete silence. My heart thundered loud enough to fill the space, but the oppressive, mind-invading whispers were gone. I sagged against the door, chest heaving. My knees threatened to give out. Light filled the hallway I'd stumbled into. A soft, warm bulb glowed overhead, casting gentle shadows. The contrast from the fog outside was staggering. The quiet inside these walls was almost painful. I lowered my hands from the door slowly, terrified the fog would seep through the cracks. But nothing moved. Nothing pressed from the other side. I stood there, trembling, trying to steady my breath. Then a voice spoke from deeper inside the hallway. You shouldn't have run. My heart lurched into my throat. I whirled around. At the far end of the hallway stood a woman. Mid-30s maybe, hair tied back, face pale but eerily calm. She wore a wool sweater and dark jeans. In any other situation she might have looked ordinary. But nothing about this felt ordinary. Anymore. Who are you? I asked, voice cracking. She didn't move closer. She just watched me with eyes that held too much knowledge. You almost didn't make it, she said. You were seconds away from being taken. My mouth worked, searching for words. How did you know I was out there? She blinked slowly. Because I heard the fog call your name. I felt every muscle in my body go rigid. She stepped forward now, just a few measured steps. You're not the first to be hunted, she said. And you won't be the last. But you're the only one I've heard it speak to so clearly. It wants you. My pulse hammered against my skull. Why? Why me? She tilted her head. Because you can hear it. Cold filled my veins. Hear what? The truth beneath the whispers. Her voice dropped. The city was built on a wound. And the fog is what's leaking out. I shook my head violently. What does that even mean? She didn't answer immediately. She glanced toward the door behind me, her expression tightening with unease. They're getting stronger, she murmured. We're running out of time. Who's we? People like you, she said. People who see the eyes, hear the whispers. People the fog has marked. My skin crawled. Marked, I echoed. She nodded. I shook my head.
No.
No, I'm not. I'm not marked. I'm not chosen. I'm not. She raised a hand, silencing me. Look at your wrist. I did. At first I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then the breath left my lungs. A faint pattern traced across my skin. A thin, swirling shape like fog etched in pale gray. It curled like smoke, the shape subtle but unmistakable. I staggered back a step.
No, iwis parat.
No, 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 what is this? What did it do to me? Her gaze softened, pitying but grim. It's the first sign, she said. Once the fog marks someone, it doesn't stop. I stared at the mark. My vision narrowed. My heartbeat roared. I didn't ask for this. You didn't have to, she said. It chooses. I clutched my wrist, heat prickling behind my eyes. What does it want? She met my gaze directly now. It wants you to come back to it. I froze. She continued. To willingly step into the fog. To surrender. My hands shook so badly I could barely keep them at my sides. That's not happening, I said. Ever. A sad smile touched her mouth. You say that now. I backed away. I need answers. I need to know what's happening. What these things are. How to stop them. She watched me with an unreadable expression. You can't stop them, she said. But you might be able to survive them. How? She stepped aside, revealing a door behind her. You should sit down, she said softly. There's something you need to see. My pulse thundered in my ears. What is it? She didn't answer. She only opened the door. Inside was a small room dimly lit. Papers covered the walls, maps, photographs, sketches of the fog, drawings of creatures with too many eyes. But what made my blood turn to ice was the table in the center of the room. On it lay a row of photographs. Every one showed someone staring directly into the fog. And every single person had the same faint swirling mark on their wrist. Just like mine. I stepped closer, breath trembling. Then I froze, because I recognized two of the faces. Jonah and Mrs. Fairchild. My stomach dropped. When were these taken? I whispered. The woman stepped behind me. Yesterday, she said. I spun to face her. Where are they? Her eyes flicked to the floor. The fog takes people, she said. But it doesn't always take them all the way. A cold wave rolled over me. What does that mean? She swallowed. It means some people come back. My heart stuttered. Like Jonah? She shook her head. No, her voice barely rose above a whisper. Jonah didn't come back. Something wearing Jonah did. I staggered backward, my head spinning. What do you mean, something wearing Jonah? I whispered, barely able to form the words. The woman didn't immediately answer. Her face grew pale, the lines around her eyes tightening. She looked like she was deciding whether or not to speak, weighing the truth in her mind. The moment stretched, my pulse pounding in my throat. I don't think you understand, she said finally, her voice low and cautious. The fog. It doesn't just consume you, changes you. It doesn't kill you outright. Not always. Pulls you in, bends your body, takes your mind. But it's never the same. Not exactly. Sometimes it leaves part of you behind. Sometimes it leaves the body, but not the person. Not all of them. I felt the ground tilt beneath me, my legs suddenly unsteady. You're saying Jonah's gone? She didn't answer right away, but I could see the truth in her eyes. That flicker of regret, or maybe resignation. Something told me she'd been down this road before, witnessed it before. He's still alive, she said. But not the way you'd think. Not the way he used to be. I felt the cold air grow even colder around me, my breath fogging in the room. The walls felt like they were closing in. Then what is he now? What's inside him? Her face twisted with an emotion I couldn't place. That's the problem. I don't know. I don't think anyone does. The fog. It wears you like a suit. You're still in there somewhere, but it hides you. And what's left behind? She faltered, her eyes darting away. It becomes part of the fog. Couldn't breathe. Jonah, my friend, my coworker, the person I'd shared laughs with and traded half-baked ideas about life. He wasn't Jonah anymore. Not fully. Something else had replaced him, something grotesque and impossible. My stomach churned. I wanted to run, wanted to flee the room, to get away from this place, but my feet wouldn't move. My body wouldn't obey me. Where is he? I managed to rasp, my voice barely recognizable. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she moved across the room, stepping carefully around piles of documents and old maps until she reached a shelf filled with crumbling books. With trembling hands, she pulled down a weathered volume, flipping through the pages until she stopped at a particular chapter. She turned back to me. "The fog leaves traces," she said, her voice thick with unease. "When it marks you, it leaves something behind. A residue. A connection." "What kind of connection?" Her lips thinned. "It means the fog doesn't just want you to join it. It wants you to be part of its story. And the longer you're exposed, the more it tries to rewrite your narrative. Until you can't remember where you end and it begins." I swallowed hard, trying to focus. "You're saying Jonah. He's still a part of it. A thread woven into the fog. A piece of its pattern. But he's not the first." I stared at her in confusion. "What do you mean?" Her fingers grazed the edge of the book, and she opened it to a page covered in dense, frantic handwriting. I stepped closer to see, my heart thudding in my chest. "They've been doing this for years," she said quietly, almost to herself. "People get taken. People get changed. Sometimes they return. Sometimes they don't." I glanced at the pages. The writing was frantic, almost manic. Sketches filled the margins. Faint images of shadowy figures. Eyes that weren't human. Limbs stretching at impossible angles. And in the middle of it all, a series of names, some crossed out, some circled. I recognized a few of them. Mrs. Fairchild, Jonah, and then a new name, one I hadn't seen before. Hannah Byrne. I froze. The name felt like a slap across my face. My throat tightened, my chest burning. That's my name," I said, my voice hoarse. The woman nodded grimly. "I've been tracking this for years. I don't know how the fog chooses, but I know it has patterns. I know how it works. And you?" She looked at me, her gaze darkening. "You're next." My entire body went cold. "Next?" I repeated, but the word barely left my lips before the weight of her statement hit me. "What do you mean next? What happens if I'm next?" She closed the book, her fingers lingering on the cover as though she was afraid to look inside. "The fog doesn't just consume you, takes parts of you, takes your memories, your will. It becomes you until there's nothing left. Until you're no longer yourself." I recoiled.
No.
"No, that can't happen. I won't." "It already has," she interrupted, her voice dark and low. "You've already heard it. The fog spoke to you. It marked you." Her eyes flicked to the faint swirl on my wrist. "You can't run from it. It's already inside of you." I stared at my wrist in horror, watching the faint pattern swirl and shift like smoke. It was no longer a mark. It was becoming part of me. The woman's eyes softened, but there was no pity in them.
I'm sorry.
"There's no escaping it. You can try to hide, try to ignore it, but it will find you. It always finds you." I shook my head violently. "I won't let it. I won't let it take me." She reached for my arm, stopping me before I could step back. Her grip was firm, but there was an undeniable sense of urgency in her touch. "Hannah," she said, her voice quiet but forceful. "There's one thing you need to understand. The fog isn't a monster. Not really. It's something older, something deeper. It's a wound, a scar that's been festering in this city for centuries. The fog is the city's sickness, its curse, and it chooses its vessels." My thoughts were spinning. "What do you mean, the city's sickness?" She glanced at the door behind her, as though afraid someone might overhear. "You think this city just happened to be cloaked in fog? That it just grew this way? No, it's part of the city's history. There's something buried beneath the streets, something ancient. The fog it's a symptom, a result." "Of what?" She hesitated, then whispered, "The city was built on a graveyard, but not a normal one, an old one. One where the bodies weren't just dead. They were wrong. They were something else. And that wrongness has seeped into the land itself. The fog is just the result of it trying to wake up." It's not just a curse, it's a disease. And it's been growing, spreading. I took a shaky step back, trying to process what she was saying. What does it want with us? With me? The fog doesn't just want to consume, she said, her voice urgent now. It wants to pull you into the story. It wants to rewrite the narrative, erase the past, and make you part of it. But not as a person, as a page in its book, a chapter that never ends. I felt nauseous. What do I do? How do I stop it? You can't, she said. But there might be a way to survive, to keep it from taking you entirely. But it won't be easy, and it won't be without sacrifice. I felt my breath catch in my throat. What kind of sacrifice? Her eyes flashed with something sharp, something desperate. You have to return, she said, her voice trembling now. You have to go back to the heart of it all, where the fog began, where it was born. Only there can you break the cycle. I stared at her, heart pounding. Where? Where is that? She swallowed hard, then muttered, almost too softly for me to hear. The old cemetery, the one beneath the river. My stomach twisted painfully. I don't know how you'll survive it, she continued, her voice distant now. But if you don't try, if you run, you'll never escape. You'll be part of the fog forever. The words echoed in my mind. The cemetery beneath the river. It sounded like a death sentence. And yet, something told me that no matter how far I ran, no matter how deep I hid, the fog would always find me. It always finds you. I didn't speak, couldn't. I knew what I had to do, but every fiber of my being screamed to turn away, to flee. The woman turned, heading toward the back of the room. She paused before she reached the door. If you go, you'll find the answers you're looking for. But be careful, Hannah. Not everyone makes it back. I didn't respond. What could I say? She was right. I couldn't run anymore. The fog had already marked me, and now it was coming for me. I stood there, frozen, as the woman's footsteps faded into the distance, swallowed by the thick silence of the room. Her words clung to me like a fog of their own. I couldn't shake them, couldn't ignore the weight of them pressing down on my chest, each one a stone sinking deeper. The old cemetery beneath the river. That was where I had to go. I didn't know how to feel about that. Part of me screamed in terror, urging me to run in the opposite direction, to go home, to find safety in the familiar, to barricade myself in my apartment and pretend that this entire nightmare was just a dream. But the other part of me, the part that had felt the pull of the fog in my very bones, the part that had seen Jonah and Mrs. Fairchild slip into the mist, never to return, knew that there was no running. Not anymore. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers to my temples. The fog was everywhere. It was in my mind, in my breath, in my very blood, and the mark on my wrist. This twisted, cursed swirl of smoke that seemed to grow more vivid with every passing moment told me the truth. I wasn't going to escape it. The fog had already chosen me. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The woman had been right about one thing. If I didn't go to the cemetery, if I didn't face whatever was waiting there, I would never escape. The fog would consume me. It would erase me, turn me into one of its hollow-eyed servants, a page in its endless, nightmarish book. I wasn't ready to die, not like that. Not to become another story the fog would rewrite. I turned away from the shelf of books, from the swirling patterns on my wrist. There was no point in thinking any longer. There was only one thing left to do. I had to find the cemetery. The streets outside were suffocating, the fog clinging to every corner, every street lamp, until the entire city seemed to be swallowed whole. There were no cars, no people. It felt like the world had been abandoned. The silence was oppressive, but I could still feel it. The eyes, watching from the depths of the mist, waiting for me to make my move. I pulled the collar of my jacket tighter around my neck and began walking, every step hesitant, every movement deliberate. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting weak, ghostly pools of light that barely penetrated the fog. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me from my thoughts. It was a message from Jonah. "Where are you?" I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling as I typed back. "I'm on my way." The dots blinked, then disappeared. A new message came through. Don't go. It's not safe. My heart lurched. I could feel the weight of his words in my chest. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him everything that had happened, to share the truth of what the woman had said. But I couldn't. He didn't understand. He couldn't. Not unless he was ready to face the same thing I was. I started walking again, faster now, the fog pressing in closer, crawling up the edges of my vision. Jonah's words felt like a chain around my ankle, pulling me back with every step. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't. I had to get to the cemetery. I kept my eyes focused ahead, my gaze sharp despite the thickening fog. The city felt wrong now, like it was nothing but a shell, empty, hollowed out, its heartbeat silenced by the weight of whatever had taken root beneath its streets. The more I walked, the more I could feel it. The pull, the whisper, come back. I clenched my fists, shaking my head to rid myself of the thought. It was the fog, just the fog. It wanted me to turn back, to stay, to become part of its endless cycle. But I couldn't. Not now. I turned a corner, and the city around me began to change. The streets narrowed, the buildings sagged, and the air grew colder, denser. I could hear the faintest echo of water rushing, somewhere far off. The river, the place I was heading. I pushed forward, each step feeling heavier, like something was holding me back. The fog thickened, swirling around my ankles, coiling like a living thing, urging me to stop. But I kept moving. My lungs burned with every breath I took, the mist creeping into my throat, thick and foul. The streetlights flickered, one by one, until they all went out in a single synchronized flash. I didn't stop. I kept moving through the dark, guided only by the sound of rushing water and the faintest glow of moonlight breaking through the fog. My heart hammered in my chest as the river's roar grew louder, more frantic, until I could see it ahead, swollen, dark, and violent, the current surging like it was alive. I felt a chill run through me as I approached the riverbank. The air was thick with the smell of decay, of something old and forgotten. I glanced around, trying to make sense of the place, but the fog made everything seem unreal, like a dream that refused to end. I stepped closer to the water, the ground slippery beneath my feet. The river was swollen from the fog, from whatever ancient sickness lay beneath it. There were no bridges here, only the water, deep and treacherous. And beneath that water I knew was the cemetery, the place where the fog had begun, the place where it would end. I looked around, scanning the shore for any sign of a way across. A boat, a bridge, anything, nothing. I glanced down at my wrist, the swirling mark glowing faintly in the dark. It pulsed, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. And then, through the fog, I saw it. A shape, a shadow, a figure standing just at the edge of the water. It wasn't human. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It was tall, its limbs twisted and unnatural, bending at angles that shouldn't have been possible. Its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, were pools of blackness, empty and infinite. It stood there, unmoving, watching me with the weight of centuries pressing down on its shoulders. I felt the pull again. It was calling me, come back. I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, my body trembling as the figure took a step forward, its long arms reaching out like branches of a dead tree. The air around it grew colder, the mist swirling faster, as though the very world was reacting to its presence. I should have run. I should have turned and bolted back into the fog, back to the city where there was still a chance to escape. But the mark on my wrist burned. The fog inside me surged. The whispers were too loud, too insistent. Come back. I stepped forward. One step, then another. And then, as if the fog itself had granted me permission, I plunged into the water. The cold hit me like a shock, and I gasped, my chest tightening as I sank beneath the surface. The river was deeper than I'd expected. Colder too, the water churning and pulling at my legs. The figure was still there, standing at the shore, its eyes fixed on me. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I hoped to find. But I kept swimming, deeper, harder, toward whatever waited beneath the water. The cemetery was below. I could feel it. I could hear it. As I swam deeper, the water grew darker, the light from the surface swallowed by the fog above me. I could barely see my own hand in front of me, but I kept going, following the pull, the call that came from deep within the river. I reached out, my fingers brushing against something solid. A wall. I gasped for air, swimming to the surface, my chest aching with the need for breath. The figure was gone, but the pull was still there, stronger than ever. I grabbed the wall, pulling myself up. The ground was cold, wet, and uneven. I was standing on a stone floor, my feet slipping as I struggled to steady myself. And then I saw it. The cemetery. It was like something from another world, something forgotten by time. The tombstones were cracked, some half submerged in the water, others leaning at unnatural angles. The fog clung to the stones like a shroud, and the air was thick with the scent of rot and decay. But it wasn't just a cemetery. It was a burial ground, a graveyard of forgotten souls. And I knew with a sickening certainty that this was the heart of the fog, and that it was waiting for me. I stood frozen, staring at the desecrated cemetery, my heart hammering in my chest. The fog swirled around the gravestones, thickening with every breath I took. The air was damp, cold, and heavy with the scent of earth and decay. It was like stepping into a nightmare, one that refused to let go. The tombstones were cracked and crumbling, their inscriptions almost entirely worn away by time. But it wasn't just the age of the stones that made the place feel wrong. There was something more, something older than the city itself. The fog seemed to seep from the ground, curling up around the stones like tendrils of smoke, reaching for me, for anyone who dared to step too close. I took a hesitant step forward, my feet sinking slightly into the damp earth, and the world around me seemed to shift. The whispers were louder now, more insistent, echoing through the fog, 1,000 voices overlapping, each one saying the same thing. Come back. The words wrapped themselves around my mind, pulling me deeper into the cemetery, into the heart of the fog. I wanted to scream, to run, but something kept me rooted to the spot. Something inside me told me I had to keep going, that this was the only way. I took another step, my legs trembling beneath me, and the mist parted briefly, revealing a large stone structure at the center of the cemetery. A mausoleum. Its entrance was dark and foreboding, the door slightly ajar as if inviting me in. The stone was covered in moss, the carvings almost too faded to decipher, but there was no mistaking the feeling that radiated from it. It was a place of power, a place of darkness. I didn't know why I was drawn to it. I only knew that I was. I moved toward the mausoleum, my breath coming in shallow gasps, the fog curling around my ankles like something alive, something hungry. Each step I took, I could feel the weight of the fog pressing in on me, tightening around my chest, my mind. The whispers were growing louder now, almost deafening, but I couldn't understand them. The words were distorted, warped by the thickness of the mist, but one thing was clear. They were calling me, and as I reached the entrance to the mausoleum, I felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. The door was open. The whispers were louder now. They were no longer words, they were images, memories, faint, fragmented glimpses of a life that wasn't mine. I saw flashes of faces, some familiar, some not, twisted in terror, their eyes wide empty. People who had been swallowed by the fog, their lives consumed by whatever cursed presence lingered here. I reached out, my hand trembling, and pushed the door open. The mausoleum was darker inside. The air was thick with the smell of earth, stale and suffocating, as if the walls themselves were made of death. But there, at the far end, something glinted in the dim light. A small silver object sitting on an altar, untouched by the passage of time. I stepped forward, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. As I got closer, I realized what it was. A necklace. The chain was delicate, worn with age, but the pendant, it was a symbol I had seen before. The same swirling mark that had appeared on my wrist. I reached out, fingers brushing against the cold metal, and the moment I touched it, a sharp jolt of pain shot through my body. I gasped, stumbling backward as the world around me seemed to warp and shift. The whispers were louder now, deafening, a cacophony of voices rising up from the depths of the earth. I could hear them clearly now, each one speaking to me, calling me by name, pulling at the edges of my consciousness. Hannah, the voice was deep, ancient, and familiar. I turned, my heart racing, and saw him, Jonah. But it wasn't Jonah. Not anymore. His eyes were empty, hollow, and his body was gaunt, as though the fog had drained the life from him. His skin was pale, his lips cracked in a twisted, empty smile. And behind him, rising from the mist, was something worse. The creature I had seen in the fog. Its body was a mass of shifting shadows, its eyes countless, swirling like pools of ink. It loomed over Jonah, its form rippling and pulsating with an unnatural energy. I froze, unable to move, unable to speak. Jonah, or what was left of him, took a step toward me, his head tilting to the side in that strange, unsettling way. "You came," he said, his voice flat and lifeless, like a broken record playing in an empty room. "You shouldn't have come." I couldn't speak. My throat was dry, my tongue heavy in my mouth. I could only watch as Jonah's body moved, jerking as though pulled by unseen strings. The creature behind him stepped forward, and the air grew colder, thicker. The fog seemed to pulse around it, rippling like the surface of a pond disturbed by a stone. "Come back." The voice was inside my mind now, twisting everything, warping my thoughts. The fog was in my veins, in my blood, and it was calling me, urging me to step forward, to give in. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but my feet were rooted to the ground, my body frozen in place. The necklace on the altar seemed to glow, its swirling mark pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Jonah's eyes locked onto mine, empty and hollow, but there was a flicker of something behind them, a memory, a hint of the person he used to be. "You don't have to be like this," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the roar of the fog. Jonah's head tilted, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by that emptiness. "You don't understand," he said, his voice hollow. "We're all part of it now. You can't escape it. None of us can." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision.
No.
"You're still in there, Jonah. You have to fight it. You have to fight the fog." He smiled again, that empty, twisted smile. "There is no fighting it." I took a step back, my pulse racing. "Then what do I do? How do I stop this?" The creature behind Jonah shifted, its form blurring, its many eyes locking onto me. The whispers intensified, 1,000 voices rising up from the depths of the earth, urging me to step forward, to give in. "Come back." I took a deep breath, my body trembling with fear, with a coldness that reached all the way to my bones. The necklace on the altar was calling me, its mark burning into my mind. And then, with a sudden surge of strength, I turned and ran. The fog clung to me, wrapping around my legs, pulling me back with every step. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't let them take me. I ran faster, my breath ragged, my feet slipping in the wet earth. The whispers were louder now, more insistent, but I ignored them. I had to get out. I had to escape. The mausoleum loomed behind me, its dark entrance beckoning, and the creature's many eyes followed me, watching, waiting. But I didn't look back. Couldn't. I didn't stop running until I was back at the river, my lungs burning, my heart pounding in my chest. The fog swirled around me, but I could feel the pull starting to fade. The whispers were quieter now, distant, as if the fog itself was retreating. I stumbled to the edge of the river, my hand gripping the stone as I caught my breath. I had made it. I had escaped, but the mark on my wrist still burned. It hadn't gone away, and the fog was still there, lurking just beyond the mist. I had run, but I knew, deep down, that I wasn't free. The fog had claimed me, and it wasn't done with me yet. I stood at the edge of the river, the cold water lapping against the shore, and the fog pressing in around me like a suffocating cloak. My lungs burned from running, but it was more than just physical exhaustion. I felt trapped. The weight of the fog, the burden of its whispers, the mark still searing into my skin. None of it had faded. I wasn't free. I wasn't safe. I looked down at my wrist, the swirls of smoke still swirling beneath my skin, as if alive, as if it had a pulse. The pattern hadn't changed, hadn't dimmed. It was there, persistent, waiting. The fog didn't care that I had escaped the mausoleum. It didn't care that I had run. It wanted me. It was already inside me. A cold gust of wind swept across the river, and I shivered, pulling my coat tighter around my body. But it didn't help. The air felt heavy, thick, as though the fog itself had crawled beneath my skin, infecting me from the inside. I needed answers. I needed to know what the hell was going on before I lost myself completely. I thought of the woman in the hidden room. She had told me there was a way to survive, to break the cycle. But what if there wasn't? What if the fog had already claimed me? What if I was just like Jonah, just like the others who had disappeared into the mist? Nothing but a hollow shell of a person, drifting through the city, already lost. The thought made me sick. I pressed my fingers to the mark again, willing it to stop, willing it to fade, but it only seemed to burn brighter, sharper, like a brand that had been seared into my flesh. And then I felt it, the pull. It was subtle at first, just a faint tug in the back of my mind, but it grew stronger with each passing second. It was the same sensation I had felt before, when I had first stepped into the fog. The same feeling that had drawn me to the cemetery, to the mausoleum. The fog was calling me again. I closed my eyes, fighting the compulsion to go toward it. My heart raced, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't want to go back. Couldn't. But the pull was so strong, so insistent, like the fog was a magnet, and I was its iron. The whispers began again. 1,000 voices, distant yet near, swirling around me like the mist itself. Come back. Come back. I clenched my fists, trying to block them out, trying to fight it. But the more I resisted, the stronger the pull became. It was like the fog was inside my mind now, wrapping itself around my thoughts, suffocating me. The mark on my wrist burned, almost to the point of agony, as if the fog itself was trying to claw its way into my very soul. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I opened my eyes, and there it was, the river, dark and foreboding, its surface barely disturbed by the current. The fog still clung to the edges, swirling in the distance, but there was something else, something beneath the water that I hadn't noticed before. Movement. A figure. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and my blood ran cold. The figure was emerging from the river, rising slowly like something pulled from the depths. Its shape was distorted, shifting in and out of focus, but I could see enough to know it wasn't human. It was something else, something ancient. And then I heard it. A voice, not from the figure, from inside my mind. Come to me. I stumbled back, my legs weak, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice, this thing, was inside me, inside my head. Its words were like claws, digging into my thoughts, pulling me toward the water, toward it. The figure rose further from the river, its body stretching unnaturally, limbs elongating and twisting as if it was made of shadows. It was not solid, not fully formed. Its edges blurred, like smoke in the wind, but its presence was undeniable. It was the thing that had been watching me, the thing that had been following me from the moment I stepped into the fog. It was the source, the heart of the fog, and it wanted me. I turned, my body moving on instinct, but my feet felt like lead. The pull was too strong now. It was in my blood, in my skin. I was already drowning in it. The fog wasn't just around me. It was inside me. Come back. The voice was louder now, an unrelenting scream, ripping through my mind. I was almost at the water's edge when I heard a voice from behind me. Hannah, don't. I whipped around, my heart leaping into my throat. Jonah, or whatever was left of him. He was standing in the fog, his body moving like a puppet on strings, jerky and unnatural. His eyes were black, hollow, but there was a flicker of something in them. Something faint, something human. "You don't have to do this," he rasped, his voice broken, as though it pained him to speak. "You can't go back. You can't let it take you." I could feel the pull, the fog tugging at me, urging me to step forward, to embrace it. But Jonah's voice cut through the fog like a lifeline, pulling me back, if only for a moment. I took a step toward him, my legs shaking. "Jonah," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Is it really you?" His head tilted that familiar, unsettling way. His lips pulled back in that empty, cruel smile. "It's me, but it's not me. You have to listen. Don't go near it. Don't." Suddenly, the figure from the river surged forward, its form blurring, rushing toward Jonah like a living shadow. The fog thickened around it, becoming almost solid, pressing in from all sides, blocking my view of Jonah. "Jonah!" I screamed, but the words were swallowed by the fog. I couldn't see him anymore. I couldn't hear him. The shadow was moving, shifting, rising higher, filling the space between us. And then, with a horrible, bone-chilling scream, the fog engulfed him. Jonah was gone. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I could only stand there, frozen in place, my heart shattered, my mind screaming in denial. It was too late. The fog was here, and it had taken him. I ran. I don't know how or why I moved, but I did. My feet pounded against the wet ground, my heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't stay. Couldn't let it take me, too. The whispers were louder now, 1,000 voices pressing in on me from all sides, each one screaming my name, calling me back to the river, to the figure that was waiting for me in the fog. Come back. It was too much. I couldn't escape it. The fog was inescapable. It had already claimed Jonah. It was going to claim me too. I pushed forward, desperate, my body numb from the cold, from the terror. And then I saw it. The entrance. The tunnel. It was a narrow passageway, half hidden by the thick mist, but I could see it clearly now. The only way out. The tunnel led beneath the city, deeper, darker, into the very heart of the fog. The whispers grew louder, the voices melding together, and I could hear the pounding of my own blood in my ears. Come back. The voice was so loud now, so powerful. It was no longer just a whisper. It was a command. I was at the entrance, one step away from the darkness, when I felt it. The pull. It was stronger than ever, tearing at my very soul, dragging me forward, forcing me into the tunnel. Couldn't fight it. Couldn't stop. But then, just as I took that final step, the world went black. I woke with a start, gasping for breath. The world around me was darkness, thick, oppressive, smothering. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, suffocating me. My chest heaved, my heart pounding in my throat, but there was no air. The fog was here. I could feel it in my skin, in my blood, its cold fingers creeping through my veins. I didn't know where I was. I pushed myself up, my hands shaking as I touched the ground beneath me. Stone. Cold stone. The walls around me were smooth, like polished marble, and the floor was uneven, jagged. The air tasted damp, heavy with the scent of decay. I tried to move, to stand, but my legs were weak, unsteady beneath me. My head was spinning, my thoughts muddled, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if I was awake or trapped in some kind of nightmare. I looked around, trying to make sense of my surroundings. The air was thick with fog, but there were no sounds. No voices. No whispers. But I could feel them. The eyes. I turned, my neck aching with the effort, but there was nothing there. Only the darkness, stretching endlessly into the distance. And yet, the eyes were still watching me, unseen but always present. I could feel them in the air, in the very stones around me. I staggered forward, my feet stumbling over the uneven ground. My breathing was erratic, shallow. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to move, had to escape this place before the fog consumed me entirely. As I walked, the walls around me seemed to shift. The stone twisted, warped, like a living thing, and the further I went, the more the fog seemed to press in on me. It was everywhere now, thick and suffocating, clinging to my skin like an oily film. And then I saw it. A door. The frame was carved from the same dark stone, but the door itself was made of something else. Something metallic, shimmering faintly in the dim light. The surface was smooth, unmarked, and the faintest hum emanated from it, as if it was alive. I didn't hesitate. I reached out, my hand trembling as I touched the cool metal, and the moment my fingers brushed against it, the door swung open with a soft, grinding noise. Beyond it was a room, but not just any room. A cavernous, hollow space, filled with an oppressive, heavy silence. The walls were lined with shelves that groaned under the weight of what they held. Books, rows upon rows of them, their spines cracked and faded, pages yellowed with age. There were hundreds, thousands, perhaps more. The sheer scale of it was enough to make my head spin. I stepped into the room, my breath catching in my throat as I looked around. Each book seemed to call to me, its presence heavy and ancient. I could feel them. The fog. It was here, too, embedded in the pages of these books, trapped in their ink, their words. The eyes. They were here as well. I couldn't explain it, but I knew. I felt them even if I couldn't see them. Watching, waiting. They were in the pages, in the shadows. It was like the fog had taken form, had manifested itself into something tangible, something permanent. I took a hesitant step forward, my hand reaching out for one of the books. It was old beyond measure. The pages felt fragile under my fingertips, like they might crumble at any moment. But they didn't. They held firm. With trembling hands, I opened the book. At first, I saw nothing but the faded ink, the crooked, illegible script. But as my eyes adjusted, the words began to come into focus. And then something else appeared. A name. Hannah Byrne. My heart skipped a beat. I blinked, rubbing my eyes, convinced I was seeing things. But the name remained, written in the same faded ink as the rest. My stomach turned, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. I flipped the page. More names. More people. All of them crossed out, some circled, others underlined, each one marked with a symbol I recognized. The same swirl. The same mark that was burned into my wrist. Come back. I could hear it again. The voice. It was coming from the pages now, whispering to me, pulling me deeper into the book, into its dark history. The fog had taken so many before me. It had claimed their lives, consumed them, twisted them into something else. Something that would never leave. I turned the page again, my hands moving of their own accord, desperate to understand. The ink was smudged in places, as if someone had written and rewritten, over and over, trying to make sense of something that couldn't be understood. The fog is not what it seems. It was not born of the city. It has always been here. The words echoed in my mind as I read them, each one sinking deeper, carving themselves into my thoughts. The fog is not just a curse. It is a creature, a being. I felt the weight of those words. It wasn't a disease. It wasn't some random natural occurrence. The fog was alive. It was a being ancient and powerful, something that had been here long before the city had been built. It had always been here. The fog didn't just want to consume. It wanted to grow. It wanted to spread. And it was using us. Using me. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Jonah. I remembered him, his hollow eyes, his broken voice, his warning. It's too late for me, he had said. But it's not too late for you. Was that true? Was there still time for me? Was there any way to stop this? I flipped another page, my mind racing, and then I saw it. Picture. A faded drawing of a place. The old cemetery. The one beneath the river. I could feel my blood run cold as the truth settled in. The fog had been there, beneath the city, long before the city was built. The cemetery wasn't just a graveyard. It was the heart of the fog, the source of it. And the fog had been feeding off of the souls buried there, drawing power from their deaths, growing stronger with each life it consumed. I turned the page again, my hands shaking with dread. The ritual. The words were scrawled in frantic, desperate handwriting, like someone had written them with a trembling hand, barely able to hold the pen steady. The letters were jagged, rushed. To stop the fog, the source must be severed. The heart of the fog must be destroyed. The price is high. My heart stopped. The price was high. I turned another page and the final words appeared. One must die. Couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I closed the book, the weight of its contents pressing down on me, suffocating me. One must die. I looked down at my wrist again, the mark still burning, pulsing with life. It was a part of me now. I could feel it inside, like a second heartbeat, a pulse that matched my own. And then I understood. The fog didn't just take you. It rewrote you. It made you part of its story, a page in its endless, cursed book. I had to sever the connection. I had to destroy the heart of the fog. But to do that, I would have to face it again. And I knew deep down that whatever the cost was, it was already too late. The fog had already claimed me. And now there was only one way out. I stood there, the book closed in my hands, my mind spinning with the implications of what I had just read. The fog wasn't just a curse. It wasn't some random, inexplicable force that had invaded the city. It was a creature, a being older than anything I had ever imagined, and it fed on the souls of the people who wandered too far, too deep. I could feel it, its presence pressing in on me, suffocating me. The whispering was louder now, louder than it had ever been. It wasn't just a voice anymore. It was 1,000 voices, all clamoring at once, each one pulling at my mind, urging me to step forward, to embrace the fog. Come back. I gripped the book tighter, the edges digging into my palms, but the voices were relentless. They clawed at the edges of my thoughts, dragging me closer to the brink of madness. Couldn't let them win. I couldn't let it take me. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The fog was alive, and it had always been here. It was part of the city's history, part of the land itself. The cemetery beneath the river, the mausoleum. It was the heart of the fog, the place where it had been born, where it had thrived, feeding on the dead, growing stronger with each passing year. I had to go back. I had to destroy it. But to do that, I would have to face the thing that had been hunting me from the moment I stepped into the mist. The figure, the shadow, the thing that had been waiting for me in the fog. I didn't know what it was, but I knew one thing. It was the key. The price was high. One must die. I didn't know who. I didn't know if I was supposed to kill it or if it was me. But I had no choice. I had to go back to the cemetery, to the heart of it all. I had to face the fog head-on and find a way to sever the connection before it consumed me completely. I looked around the room, my eyes scanning the shelves, the countless books that lined them, each one a record of the fog's long, twisted history. I had to find something, something that would help me, something that would show me the way. There had to be more answers here. My fingers brushed across the spines of the books, each one seemingly more ancient than the last. The dust was thick, almost suffocating, but I didn't care. I needed to find something, anything, that would guide me to the heart of the fog. The book I had just read was only a fragment, a piece of the puzzle. I needed more. I pulled the nearest book from the shelf, its pages fragile with age. I opened it, scanning the words, the faded ink, but it was almost impossible to make sense of. The language was strange, twisted, like it had been written in a code only the fog could understand. I flipped through the pages, each one more nonsensical than the last, until I reached the end. There was a picture, a diagram, a circle with a symbol in the center, something that looked like a twisted spiral, much like the mark on my wrist. The symbol was surrounded by what looked like a series of runes, scribbled in jagged, hurried lines. There were more words beneath the diagram, but they were unreadable, as if the ink had been smeared intentionally, purposefully. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized what I was looking at. This wasn't just a diagram. It was a ritual, a map to the heart of the fog. I closed the book, my breath shaky as I looked around the room. The walls seemed to close in on me, the bookshelves pressing together like they were closing in, trapping me. The air felt thicker now, heavier. The fog was here, in this room, in these books, in the very walls. Come back. The voice was louder now, stronger, pulling at my mind, at my very soul. The fog wasn't just a thing I could fight. It wasn't something I could outrun. It was a part of me, and the more I fought, the more I struggled, the deeper it sank its claws into me. I couldn't stop now. I had to go to the cemetery. I had to face the fog, and I had to end it. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. I thought of Jonah, his broken body, his hollow eyes, the creature that had taken him. Was there still a piece of him left? Could I still save him? Or was he lost forever? Another soul claimed by the fog? My heart twisted at the thought, but I couldn't afford to dwell on it. The fog was waiting. It was watching. And if I didn't act, I would be its next victim. I turned away from the shelves and made my way toward the door. The moment I crossed the threshold, the fog thickened, swirling around me like a living thing. I could feel it, pressing in on me, suffocating me. The air tasted of rot, of something ancient and decayed. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't stay here, lost in the endless maze of books. The fog had taken too many already. It was time for it to end. The city was quiet when I emerged, the fog still thick and unrelenting. The streets were empty, the buildings towering over me like silent sentinels, their windows dark and lifeless. The fog had consumed everything. There was no escape. I walked through the streets, my feet heavy with each step. The mark on my wrist burned, the pain almost unbearable, but I couldn't stop. I had to get to the river. I had to get to the cemetery. The ritual, the map, it was all leading me back there. I turned down an alley, the fog swallowing me whole, and I felt it then. The eyes, watching, always watching. I could feel the whispers again, louder now, closer. They were in my head, in my mind, pulling at my thoughts, at my very soul. The fog was inside me now, twisting me, turning me into something else. Come back. I shook my head, pressing my hands to my ears, trying to block out the voices, but they were impossible to ignore. The fog was in me. It had been in me from the moment I stepped into it. I was part of it now. I reached the river, the dark water churning beneath the mist, and there, at the water's edge, I saw it. The mausoleum, the source, the heart of the fog. The door was ajar, just as it had been when I first saw it. But this time I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of earth, of decay, and the walls seemed to close in on me as I made my way deeper into the mausoleum. The fog was everywhere now, swirling around me, pressing in on me, urging me to turn back. But I couldn't. I had come this far. I had to finish it. I reached the altar at the center of the mausoleum, the stone covered in a layer of dust, and there, resting on the altar, was the same silver necklace I had seen earlier. The pendant, the twisted swirl, the mark that was burned into my skin. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and picked it up. And in that moment I felt it. The pull, the creature, the thing that had been watching me, that had been calling to me, was here. It was waiting. I looked up, and there it was. The figure. It was taller now, its body shifting and twisting like smoke, its many eyes staring down at me, cold and empty. Its form was not human, not anything recognizable. It was a thing born of the fog, of darkness, of the very air I breathed. And I knew. It was time. The creature loomed before me, its many eyes reflecting the dim, sickly light of the mausoleum. It was like a nightmare made flesh, if it even was flesh. Its form shifted constantly, blurring at the edges, like it was made of smoke or shadows, or some kind of dark energy that didn't belong in this world. I could feel its presence in my bones, in my chest, like a weight pressing down, suffocating me. Couldn't look away. Its eyes held me captive, pulling me deeper into its gaze, into the fog. The whispers filled the air, louder now, 1,000 voices screaming at me from all sides, but the creature's gaze drowned them out. There was only it, only the fog, only the thing that had been calling me since the moment I stepped into this cursed city. It had been waiting for me, and now it wanted me. I took a step back, my heart hammering in my chest, my breath coming in shallow, panicked gasps. I could feel the mark on my wrist burning, the symbol pulsing beneath my skin like it was alive. I wanted to tear it off, to rip it from my body, but I knew it wouldn't matter. It was already part of me. The creature's many eyes blinked, and then it moved. The shadows that made up its body rippled, distorting and warping, and in the next instant, it was inches from me, its face, or what passed for a face, hovering just above mine. It was like staring into a void, into something that had no end, no beginning, no meaning, just emptiness. But in that emptiness, there was hunger, and it was hungry for me. Hannah? The voice echoed in my mind, deep and resonant, but cold, like the sound of wind rushing through the hollowed-out remains of a forgotten world. You cannot escape. I couldn't speak. My throat was dry, my body paralyzed with fear. The fog swirled around us, a tangible thing, pressing against my skin, invading my lungs, choking me. You belong to us. The voice was louder now, 1,000 tones woven together, each one sharpening the other, until it was a scream that felt like it was being etched into my very soul. You are ours. You always have been. I shook my head, trying to break free of its influence. The fog, the whispers, the pull, it was all in me now, inescapable. There was no running. There was no hiding. The creature was the fog. The fog was the creature. But there was something else. Something deep inside me. A flicker. A fragment of defiance. I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I raised my hand, and with all the strength I could muster, I reached for the necklace. The cold silver was a sharp contrast against my clammy skin. The moment my fingers closed around the pendant, the world seemed to shudder. A tremor rippled through the air, and the creature paused, its eyes narrowing. The whispers faltered, as if the fog itself had hesitated, as if something had disturbed its control. What is this? The voice in my mind was distorted now, shaky, as if the creature was struggling to maintain its hold. You are not supposed to. The mark on my wrist flared, burning hot, almost unbearable. The pain was excruciating, but I didn't let go. I had to hold on. I had to hold on long enough to find the strength to break the cycle. The creature recoiled slightly, its many eyes flickering in confusion, but its form was beginning to dissolve, the edges of its body swirling like smoke, slipping out of focus. The fog around me thickened, suffocating, but I could feel the pull weakening. The connection was beginning to fray. With a desperate cry, I tore the necklace from my neck, pulling the pendant from the chain. I could feel the fog screaming in protest, a final, gut-wrenching scream that rattled the walls of the mausoleum, shaking the stones beneath my feet. The creature lunged at me, but it wasn't fast enough. The necklace burned hot in my hand, its symbol glowing with an unnatural light, and with a scream of defiance, I thrust the pendant forward, straight into the center of the creature's dark form. There was a deafening sound, a roar, a crash, a violent shaking of the earth beneath me. The entire mausoleum seemed to groan, its walls cracking, stones crumbling away like dust. The fog churned violently, spinning in on itself, as if something was being torn apart from within. The creature howled, its form shuddering, its eyes flashing wildly as the pendant pierced the heart of it, breaking through the darkness like a spear. The roar of the fog was deafening, but beneath it, I heard something else. A voice distant but familiar. It was Jonah. Hannah? I spun around, my body jerking at the sound of his voice. There, standing at the far end of the mausoleum, was Jonah. Alive, no longer twisted by the fog, his body no longer broken and empty. He was still pale, his eyes wide with confusion and fear, but his humanity was there, shining through. He looked at me, his expression almost unreadable, his lips parting slightly. Hannah, he said again, more softly this time. The fog was retreating, swirling back, dissipating, as if it was being sucked into the earth itself. The mausoleum was falling apart, the walls crumbling in on themselves, the very ground shaking with the force of the explosion of energy. But despite the chaos, Jonah's voice, his presence, cut through it all. I could feel it now. The fog was weakening. The creature's grip on the city, on me, was loosening. The mark on my wrist had stopped burning, the symbol fading away, its presence receding from my skin like smoke. But it wasn't gone. Not entirely. Jonah stepped forward, his eyes locked onto mine. "You did it," he whispered, his voice almost lost in the stillness that followed. "You stopped it." I shook my head, my legs unsteady beneath me. I felt like I had been shaken apart, my body worn thin by the struggle. The pain was fading, but it wasn't over. The fog had been broken, but it had left a scar that would never heal. I took a step toward him, my chest tight, my breath ragged. But the moment I moved closer, something shifted in the air. A sudden, dark pressure pressed down on us, and I felt the weight of the fog pressing in again, heavier this time. The walls of the mausoleum were buckling. The very earth beneath our feet was trembling. The fog wasn't gone. It was changing. I glanced up at Jonah, and in his eyes, I saw the same realization. "We didn't stop it," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It's still here." Jonah looked at me, his face pale and strained, but there was something else in his eyes now, an understanding. "It's never really gone, Hannah," he said softly, almost regretfully. "It just hides. It waits." The ground cracked beneath our feet, and a deep, otherworldly sound echoed through the mausoleum. The figure, the creature, was reforming. Not fully, not yet, but I could feel it. The fog was shifting, changing into something even darker, more dangerous. And I knew then that our battle was far from over. I staggered back, heart hammering in my chest as the mausoleum collapsed around us. The fog was returning, thicker than ever, rising up from the cracks in the stone, swirling in violent, unnatural spirals. Jonah reached for me, pulling me away from the chaos, his grip firm but urgent. "Come on, we have to get out of here," he said. But I couldn't move. I couldn't look away from the dark tendrils of the fog that twisted around us, pulling at the air, dragging everything toward the center. It was like a storm, fury and destruction in its wake, a force of nature that couldn't be stopped. But I wasn't about to let it take me again. I had to finish what I started. I had to stop this. Jonah's eyes locked onto mine. "It's too dangerous, Hannah," he said, his voice thick with fear. "We can't fight it anymore. We need to leave." I shook my head, the fire inside me burning brighter than ever.
No.
"Not again. We need to end this." And with that, I stepped forward, into the heart of the fog, knowing that the final battle had only just begun. The fog pressed in around me like a living thing, a suffocating weight that clung to my skin, filled my lungs, twisted into my thoughts. The mausoleum was collapsing, crumbling apart as if it were being consumed by the very entity it had housed for so long. The air vibrated with energy, with power. But not just any power. This was the fog's power, ancient and unyielding. It wasn't done. It was far from finished, and I was standing in its way. I could hear Jonah behind me, his voice rising in protest, his footsteps following me as I stepped deeper into the heart of the fog. "Hannah, please." His voice trembled, laced with panic. "You can't. You don't understand. It's too strong." But I was already too far gone. I had felt the pull before, that terrible tug in my chest, that whispering voice that told me to turn back, to run. But running had never worked. It had never worked for Jonah. It wouldn't work for me. Not now. Not when I was this close to ending it all. I reached forward, my hand trembling as I pushed through the dense mist, the air growing colder with every step. The walls of the mausoleum were cracking, crumbling like paper, dust and debris filling the air. But the fog, it was still there, swirling and shifting in the center of the room, taking form, becoming something more. I could feel it in the air, in the very earth beneath my feet. It wasn't just a force. It was a presence. Alive. Hungry. "You're too late." The voice echoed in my mind again, cold and empty, but full of malice. "You cannot stop what has already begun." I gritted my teeth and kept moving. I wouldn't stop. Not now. Not when I was so close to the answer. I could feel Jonah's presence, his footsteps growing louder behind me. He was still trying to reach me, trying to stop me, but I couldn't let him. I couldn't let anyone stop me. I had come too far. The fog was now swirling around me, thick and heavy, and as I moved deeper into the center of the mausoleum, I could see it. A shape, a shadow, rising from the ground like smoke. A figure more distinct now taking form. The creature was rising, pulling itself out of the mist, and as it did, I could feel the air growing heavier, the weight of its presence pressing down on me, suffocating me. The mark on my wrist burned hotter than ever before, searing into my skin, the symbol glowing with a sickly, unnatural light. I gritted my teeth, trying to ignore the pain. It was just a part of me now. The fog, the creature, it was all inside me. I had no choice but to face it. The figure solidified before me. It was tall, impossibly tall, and its shape was shifting, warping in and out of focus, like smoke caught in the wind. Its eyes were countless, floating in the air around it, watching me. It had no face, no true form, just an endless swirl of shadow and fog, but the presence of it was undeniable. The air felt charged with static, with energy, with something ancient, something dark. I could feel it, the weight of it, the hunger. You think you can stop me? The voice was everywhere. Inside me, around me, pressing on every nerve. You are nothing. You are already mine. The creature's voice rang in my head, and for a moment, I hesitated. The fog had already claimed me once. It had marked me. The thing standing before me, this ancient force, had taken so much from me. It had taken Jonah, twisted him, broken him, turned him into something else. It had taken countless others. And now it wanted me, completely, but I would not let it. I had to find a way. There had to be a way to sever the connection, to destroy this thing once and for all. The pendant, the map, the ritual, it was all leading me here, to this moment, to this fight. The creature took a step forward, its form shifting and undulating, and I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. The air grew thick with fog, the walls of the mausoleum now completely obscured. I could barely see in front of me, but I could feel the creature's presence, feel its hunger, feel its dark influence clawing at my mind. You cannot escape. The voice was soft now, like a lullaby, soothing, comforting. You will join us. You will become part of us. I closed my eyes, the mark on my wrist flaring again, the heat almost unbearable. But I knew what I had to do. I had already given up so much. I had already lost so much. But I wouldn't lose myself. Not again. I reached into my pocket, my fingers trembling as I pulled out the pendant. The silver was cool against my skin, but the power within it, within the symbol, was undeniable. It was more than just a necklace. It was a key to ending this, a key to severing the connection between the fog and me, between the fog and the city. I held it up, the symbol glowing brighter now, pulsing with energy. And as I did, the fog around me began to recede, shrinking back from the pendant like it was afraid, like it was being repelled. The creature faltered, its form wavering, shifting again.
No.
The voice screeched, louder now, more frantic. You cannot take it from me. You are nothing without me. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest, the pendant burning in my hand, the glow growing brighter with every step. The creature roared, its form collapsing in on itself, the smoke twisting and churning like it was in pain. But I didn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I raised the pendant higher, and with a final, desperate cry, I thrust it forward, aiming it directly at the heart of the fog. The source, the creature. The moment the pendant made contact, there was a violent shockwave, a blast of energy that tore through the mausoleum. The ground beneath me cracked open. The air itself seemed to shudder, and the creature let out a deafening guttural roar, a sound so filled with rage and agony that it rattled my bones. And then silence. For a moment, everything was still. The fog was gone, evaporating into the air, dissipating like smoke. The creature was gone. The mausoleum was falling apart, crumbling into dust, but I didn't care. It was over. It had to be over. I collapsed to my knees, the weight of it all crashing down on me. The pendant in my hand was still glowing, but the light was dimming, fading. The mark on my wrist had stopped burning. It was still there, but the connection, whatever it was, had been severed. The fog was gone. But at what cost? I looked around, gasping for breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My head was spinning, my body trembling with exhaustion, with relief, but there was something else. A dark, gnawing feeling deep in my gut. Something wasn't right. I stood slowly, my legs shaking, and I looked up. Through the crumbling walls of the mausoleum, I could see the sky, the first real light I'd seen in what felt like an eternity. The sun was rising, a pale, weak light that didn't seem quite real. It felt like the city itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment. And then I heard it. A voice. Jonah. Hannah. I whipped around, my heart pounding. There he was, standing in the ruins of the mausoleum, his face still pale, but alive. His eyes were wide, his lips parted in surprise, as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. I stumbled toward him, my mind racing, my chest tight with emotion. But as I got closer, I felt it. The fog. It was still there. Not in the air, not in the city, but inside him. Inside us. Jonah was alive, but he wasn't free. He never would be. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest, and for a moment, the world around me seemed to freeze. Jonah was alive, yes, but as I looked at him, something felt wrong. His face, his eyes, they were the same, but not entirely. There was a faint, sickly hue to his skin, a pallor that went beyond simple exhaustion. It was as if something had drained the life from him, as if he were no longer entirely human. He stared back at me, his eyes wide, but there was a distance in them, a hollow emptiness that I hadn't seen before. The fog, whatever it had done to him, was still there, lurking beneath the surface. I could feel it like a weight in the air, pressing against my lungs. Hannah? His voice was barely a whisper, but the tremor in it sent a shiver down my spine. Is it over? Did we do it? I wanted to believe it was. I wanted to believe that the fog was gone, that the city was free, that I had somehow defeated this ancient, all-consuming entity. But standing here, looking at Jonah, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. Not yet. I took a cautious step toward him. The ground beneath me cracked and unstable, the remnants of the mausoleum crumbling around us. The air was still thick with the echoes of the creature's final scream, but the fog, the heart of it, was gone, faded into nothingness. Or so I thought. Jonah took a step forward as well, his eyes locking onto mine, but his expression seemed distant, as if he were struggling to remember something. His lips parted, and for a moment, I thought he was going to speak, but then he stopped, his breath hitching in his chest. Hannah, I can't. His voice faltered, and he looked down at his hands, which were trembling, as if they didn't belong to him. It's still inside me. I felt my chest tighten at his words. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Jonah raised his gaze to meet mine again, and this time I saw it. The flicker of something deep in his eyes, something that wasn't quite human. The fog had marked him. It had claimed him, twisted him, and now it was using him. I can feel it, he said, his voice growing weaker, more desperate. It's still here, in me. The fog. It's part of me. I can't shake it. I can't. He stopped, gasping for air, his hands gripping at his chest as though something inside him were trying to break free. I can't escape it, Hannah. It's too strong. It's too late. I took a step closer, reaching out to him, my hand trembling.
No, Jonah.
You're free now. I destroyed the source. The fog. It's gone. My voice shook with uncertainty as I spoke the words, as if I was trying to convince myself more than him. Jonah's eyes narrowed, and his lips curled into a twisted, almost knowing smile. You don't understand, he said, his voice cold, empty. It doesn't die. The fog doesn't die. It never dies. It just changes. It moves. It finds new hosts, new bodies, new minds. And once it has you, it keeps you. Forever. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, a sense of dread washing over me as his words sank in. He was right. The fog wasn't something you could just destroy. It wasn't a curse you could break. It was an infection, parasite. It lived in everything, in everyone, and it would never let go. Jonah's body jerked suddenly, as if the fog itself had taken hold of him once more. His eyes rolled back, and his mouth opened in a silent scream, but no sound came out. He staggered backward, his form shifting, as if the fog was inside him, clawing its way out, forcing him to move against his will. I rushed toward him, but before I could reach him, Jonah collapsed to the ground with a sickening thud. His body convulsed, spasming uncontrollably as the fog began to rise from within him, swirling in tendrils of shadow, escaping through his mouth and nose like some kind of toxic gas. I knelt beside him, my heart breaking as I watched him writhe, his face twisted in pain.
Jonah, no.
I cried out, grabbing hold of his shoulders, trying to steady him, but he was already slipping away from me. His eyes locked onto mine for a moment, and in them I saw it. The fog. It was inside him, but it was also outside of him. It was in the air, in the ground, in the very city itself. His body went limp, and I knew then that the fog had completely claimed him. The creature, the thing I had tried to destroy, it had found a new host. It had taken him, and that was when I understood. It was never over. The fog had always been more than a curse. It had always been a force, a living thing, feeding on fear, on death, on the desperation of those who sought to escape it. Couldn't be destroyed, couldn't be vanquished, could only be passed on. I stood up slowly, my knees weak beneath me, my head spinning. I looked around the ruins of the mausoleum, at the fading remnants of the fog still clinging to the crumbling walls, the air thick with an unsettling calm. The creature was still here, still lurking, still waiting, and it would never leave. The city wasn't free. It would never be free. Not now. Not ever. I stepped away from Jonah's lifeless body, my mind reeling. He was gone, but the fog was still alive. It had claimed him, and it would claim others, just as it had always done. It would continue to spread, to infect, to consume. I had thought I could stop it. I had thought I could end it all. But now I understood that the fog wasn't something that could be fought with brute force or with courage alone. It was something older, something beyond our understanding. And it was a part of us, of the city, of everything. I turned away from Jonah, You can replace this text with any text you wish. You can either write in this text box or paste your own text here. Try different languages and voices. Change the speed and the pitch of the voice. You can even tweak the SSML, speech synthesis markup language, to control how the different sections of the text sound. Click on SSML above to give it a try. Enjoy using text-to-speech. Smoke brushing against my skin, whispering to me, tempting me to turn back. I could hear its voice again, faint and insistent, curling around my thoughts like smoke, telling me that I was too weak to defeat it, that I could never escape it. I shook my head, trying to drown out the whispers. I couldn't let them pull me back into the fog. Not again. I came to a stop as I reached a narrow alley, one that I hadn't noticed before. The walls on either side were lined with broken windows and shattered glass, but there was something about it, something that drew me in. The air felt heavier here, thick with a sense of something hidden, something waiting. It was like the fog had gathered here, like it was concentrated in this one place, calling me to uncover what had been buried. I hesitated for a moment before stepping into the alley. The fog swirled more violently here, as if it had a mind of its own, as if it were alive, watching, following my every movement. I could feel the weight of it pressing against me, whispering things I didn't want to hear, pushing me toward the dark heart of the city. At the end of the alley, partially hidden beneath a pile of rubble, was an old door. It was weathered, covered in moss and vines, but it was solid and it felt different, as if it had been forgotten for a reason. I couldn't explain why, but I knew this was where I needed to go. I reached for the door, my hand trembling as I pulled it open, the heavy wood creaking in protest. A gust of cold air swept past me, carrying with it a scent of decay, of something long dead. I stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind me with a hollow thud. The room I found myself in was small, its walls lined with shelves and dusty crates. There were no windows, no source of light except for the faint, sickly glow that seemed to pulse from the walls themselves. The fog was here too, swirling around my feet, crawling up the walls like some living thing. But there was something else in the air, a feeling that this place was different from the rest of the city. This wasn't just a room. It was a holding place, a place where something had been locked away. I moved deeper into the room, my breath shallow, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. In the center of the room was a small table, and upon it a single book. It was old, its pages yellowed with age, its cover cracked and worn. But it wasn't the book itself that caught my attention. It was the strange markings on the cover. The same twisted spiral symbol I had seen before, the one that had been burned into my wrist, the one that had appeared on the pendant. I reached out, my fingers trembling as I lifted the book from the table. As soon as I touched it, a wave of cold washed over me, as if the book were a conduit to something dark and ancient. The whispers began again, this time louder, more insistent, swirling around my head, filling my thoughts with their poisoned words.
Come closer.
The fog tugged at me, pulling me toward the book, urging me to open it, to uncover its secrets. But I resisted. I had seen enough of the fog's influence to know that it wasn't interested in helping me. It was interested in controlling me, in drawing me in so that it could consume me. I opened the book, slowly, the pages creaking with age, and as I began to read, a chill ran down my spine. The language was ancient, indecipherable in parts, but the meaning was clear. It was a journal of sorts, a record of the origins of the fog, this creation, this purpose. The fog wasn't just a manifestation of fear, of death, of grief. It was something more, something that had been created long ago, buried deep beneath the city. And it wasn't simply alive, it was sentient. It was a being of sorts, a creature that had been imprisoned by those who had once lived here, locked away in the heart of the city, hidden beneath the river. And now the fog was awakening. It had begun to feed again. It had begun to spread. I could feel it now, the weight of its presence surrounding me, pressing in from all sides. It was as if the walls of the room were closing in, as if the fog were closing the distance between us, reaching out to claim me once more. But there was something else. A part of the journal, a note in the margins, told of a way to contain the fog permanently. A ritual, a binding, a sacrifice. It was my choice now. The weight of the journal in my hands grew heavier with every word I read. It was as if the book itself was alive, pulsing with the power of the fog, feeding on the fear that had begun to rise in my chest. The ink on the pages seemed to shift, as if the words were moving, rearranging themselves to reveal secrets I wasn't ready to learn. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't pull away. The ritual, the binding, the sacrifice. The words swam in front of me, each sentence more chilling than the last. The fog, it seemed, had a purpose. It wasn't just a curse or a plague, something random that had befallen the city. It had been created, intentionally, by those who had come before. The journal spoke of an ancient order, a group of people who had been tasked with containing something far worse than the fog itself, something so dark and powerful that the fog had become their only means of holding it at bay. The fog was a prison, a barrier created to contain something worse. But what? I flipped through the pages, searching for more, my fingers trembling as I turned them one by one. The journal detailed the creation of the fog, its purpose, its binding. It spoke of rituals, rituals designed to keep the entity trapped within, to ensure that the fog never escaped its prison. The people who had created it had known the cost. They had known the price of containing such darkness. And now the fog had begun to break free. It had begun to feed once more, to grow, to spread. My breath caught in my throat as I turned to the last page of the journal. There, in bold letters, was the final piece of the puzzle. A description of the ritual, the final act that could lock the fog away forever. But the ritual required a sacrifice. A soul. A willing soul. My mind raced as the words echoed in my ears. A willing soul. The fog had to be contained, but it couldn't be done without someone willing to give up everything. Someone who would make the ultimate sacrifice to seal it away, to keep the world from being consumed by its darkness. My chest tightened as I realized what this meant. What I had to do. The cost. The journal didn't say who would be chosen, or how, but there was no mistaking it. The ritual was clear. The only way to stop the fog, to keep it from escaping, was to offer a soul in exchange for its imprisonment. A life for a life. I could feel the fog now, pressing in on me. The air was thick, suffocating, like a cold hand around my throat. I could hear it, feel it, as if it were speaking to me directly. It wanted me. It had always wanted me. And now I was the one who had to choose. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding in my chest. The fog was still here. It was waiting for me to make my move, to choose. I thought of Jonah, his face twisted by the fog, his body broken and consumed by it. I had failed him. I had failed him by thinking that I could defeat the fog, by thinking that I could escape it. But now, standing here in this room, reading these words, I understood. There was no escaping it. The fog was a part of this city, of this world. And it would never stop feeding, never stop growing. I thought of the city, its broken streets, its empty buildings, its quiet, lifeless heart. I thought of the people, those who had been lost to the fog, those who would be lost to it if I failed. The fog couldn't be stopped. Not by force, not by strength. It had to be contained, locked away, for good. But at what cost? I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the last words of the journal. It was clear now. The ritual was the only way to stop it, the only way to keep the city, and the world, safe from the endless fog. But the price was steep. I had no choice. There was no other way. With shaking hands, I closed the journal, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, 1,000 fears. The fog was closing in. I could feel it pressing against me, reaching for me, trying to pull me into its grasp. It wanted me, needed me, and now I had to make the choice. I could still leave. I could turn away, escape. I could run. I could try to find another way. But deep down, I knew there was no other way. There never had been. I wasn't ready to die. But for the city, for everyone, for Jonah, I had to do this. I stood up, my legs shaky, my head spinning. The fog wrapped itself around my body, its tendrils licking at my skin, whispering in my ears. I could feel it crawling under my skin, burrowing into my thoughts, trying to drive me to madness. But I didn't let it, couldn't let it. I walked toward the back of the room, where a small altar stood, its surface worn and chipped from age. On top of the altar was a stone bowl, cracked but still intact. The journal had said that this was the place, the location of the ritual, the place where the sacrifice had to be made. I reached for the pendant around my neck, the silver cool against my skin, and held it in my palm. The mark on my wrist flared to life again, the symbol glowing with an eerie light. The fog around me swirled, growing more agitated, more desperate, but I didn't stop, couldn't stop. I placed the pendant in the stone bowl, my heart pounding in my chest as I whispered the words I had read in the journal. The ritual had begun. The fog swirled violently now, the walls of the room shaking as if the very foundation of the city was being torn apart. I could feel the pressure in the air, the weight of the fog, the darkness, bearing down on me. I closed my eyes and raised my hands, palms open to the ceiling, letting the power of the ritual flow through me. The fog screamed in my ears, but I drowned it out, focusing only on the words, on the chant, on the binding. The symbol on my wrist burned hotter than ever before, and I could feel the fog writhing inside me, fighting to break free. But I held it down. I held it together. The light from the pendant grew blinding now, and I could feel the fog retreating, slowly but surely, the pull of it weakening. I had done it. I had locked it away. But the cost was high. The price would always be high. I could feel my body growing weaker, my vision blurring, my breath shallow. The ritual was demanding everything I had. My strength, my life, my soul. But I didn't care. The fog would be contained. The city would be saved. And that was enough. The fog was silent now. The room was still. The ritual was complete. And I had made my choice. The air was thick with stillness. And for a brief moment, I thought it was over. I thought I had done it. The fog, the nightmare. It was locked away, contained, its power sealed in the very marrow of the city. But as the last echoes of the ritual faded into silence, I realized something deep inside me had shifted. The fog was gone, yes, but its presence still lingered, like a shadow that refused to leave. My legs buckled beneath me, the strain of the ritual pulling at every part of my being. I felt like I was being torn apart, my body fighting the unnatural force that I had just unleashed. The air around me felt cold now, too cold. The walls of the room closed in, and I felt my breath become shallow, my chest tight. The weight of the pendant in the stone bowl was gone, but its absence left an emptiness, a hollow feeling in my chest. I staggered back, gripping the altar for support, trying to steady myself. I could feel the fog pressing in on me once more, but it wasn't the same as before. It was distant, subdued, as if it were waiting for something, waiting for the right moment to strike again. But there was something else, something new. I glanced down at my wrist. The symbol was still there, etched into my skin, but it was different now. The lines of the symbol had shifted, changed, as if they had been altered by the ritual. A pulse of warmth flared from the mark, spreading up my arm, and for the briefest second, I felt a connection to something far beyond myself. Something ancient, something far darker than the fog. My breath hitched, and a voice whispered in my mind. A voice I couldn't ignore. "It's not over." I froze, the words echoing in my skull. I wanted to scream, to deny it, but I couldn't. The voice wasn't the fog. It wasn't the entity I had tried to trap. It was something older, something that had always been there, something buried beneath the city's surface, something that the fog had been guarding. I clutched my wrist, the mark burning like fire now, searing into my skin. The room seemed to grow darker around me, the air thickening, suffocating. The fog was no longer the enemy I had thought it was. The fog was merely a guard, a sentinel. The real threat had always been something else, something far worse. And now it was awake. I stumbled backward, panic flooding my veins as I tried to make sense of what was happening. My heart was racing, and every breath felt like it might be my last. The walls of the room seemed to shift, as if the very foundations of the building were being torn apart by an unseen force. Then I saw it. A shadow, dark, shifting, impossible to define, emerged from the cracks in the stone floor. It was not the fog. It was something far worse, something alive. I could feel its presence, like a suffocating weight pressing down on my chest, pulling the air from my lungs. It was ancient. It was powerful. It was free. The fog hadn't been the prison. It had been the ward. The thing that had been trapped beneath the city for centuries was now free, and I had unwittingly released it. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My mind was clouded with fear, with confusion, and with the overwhelming sense that I had just doomed everyone. The thing before me, whatever it was so much darker, so much older than anything I had ever imagined. The fog had been its cage, and now that cage was broken. The shadow stretched toward me, tendrils of darkness reaching out, and I could feel its touch like ice against my skin. I gasped for breath, my body freezing, my muscles locking in place as the darkness surrounded me. But then, through the fear, through the overwhelming terror that threatened to swallow me whole, something inside me stirred. The pendant, the mark on my wrist, the ritual had done something to me. It had connected me to whatever this thing was. And now it was calling me. "You released me." The voice was not spoken aloud. It wasn't a sound at all. It was a presence, a thought, an impression in my mind, a realization. The thing before me knew me. It knew what I had done. And now it wanted something from me. It wanted to make a deal. No, I whispered, shaking my head, trying to deny the words, trying to pull myself free of whatever had taken hold of me. But I couldn't. The darkness swirled around me, pulling tighter, its tendrils curling into my skin, into my thoughts. I could feel it inside me now, whispering to me, promising power, promising control. You have sealed the fog away, the voice continued, but you have awakened me. You are mine now, Hannah. Your soul is mine. I struggled against it, but the more I fought, the tighter its grip became. I could feel it, seeping into my thoughts, into my very essence, claiming me bit by bit. I had thought I had completed the ritual. I had thought I had sealed away the fog, but in doing so, I had unleashed something far worse. And now it wanted me. It wanted me to be its vessel, to be its host. The room seemed to collapse around me as the tendrils of darkness dug deeper into my mind. I could feel its thoughts pressing against mine, trying to consume me, trying to take control. I gasped for breath, feeling like I was drowning in it, my body and mind both failing me. I couldn't escape. I couldn't fight it. But then, somewhere deep within me, I found a spark of resistance. The pendant, the mark on my wrist. The ritual hadn't just sealed the fog away. It had changed me. It had bound me to the fog in some way. But now I realized it had also given me something else. Connection. A tether. I gritted my teeth and reached for the pendant, clutching it in my fist, feeling the cold metal against my skin. The darkness screamed in my mind, but I held on to it, using the connection I had forged to fight back. It wanted to claim me. It wanted to consume me, but I wouldn't let it. With every ounce of strength I had left, I focused on the pendant, on the mark, on the ritual, and I fought. The darkness recoiled, as if my resistance had caught it off guard, and I pushed harder, forcing it back, shoving it out of my mind. The shadow shrieked in fury, its form flickering and distorting, but I wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop. I had made a choice before, and I wasn't going to let it be my last. With one final burst of energy, I slammed the pendant into the stone altar, pressing it into the cracks in the floor, and I uttered the words from the journal once more. The ritual wasn't over. Couldn't be. Not until the darkness was contained. The ground trembled beneath me, and the air grew thick with the power of the ritual. The shadow screamed again, but this time it was fading, dissolving, being dragged back into the depths from which it had come. I could feel its presence weakening, its grip loosening, and I fought to hold on, to finish what I had started. The darkness pulled away from me, retreating back into the cracks, back into the prison it had once been. But it wasn't gone. I knew that now. It would never truly be gone. It would always wait, always be there. But for now it was contained. I collapsed to my knees, the weight of everything crashing down on me. My breath came in ragged gasps as the last remnants of the shadow faded into the walls, leaving me in the still, quiet room. The fog was gone. The city was saved. But the cost was more than I could bear. The room was silent now, but it was a different kind of silence. The kind that followed a storm, a silence where the air still trembled, heavy with the echoes of something that had almost broken free. I sat on the cold stone floor, my hands trembling in my lap, my body aching as if I had been torn apart and put back together again. The fog was gone. I had done it. The city was safe. But was it? The thought gnawed at me, pulling me from the quiet numbness that had settled in my chest. The pendant, still clutched tightly in my hand, glowed faintly. Faint, but still there. Still pulsing with a power I didn't fully understand. The mark on my wrist, too, was still burning, though now it felt different.
Subdued, but permanent.
A constant reminder of what I had done and what I had become. The darkness had retreated, yes, but it had not disappeared. It was only contained, locked away for now, but I could feel it, always, like a shadow that followed me, a presence in the depths of my mind, whispering, reminding me that the thing I had unleashed was still alive, still waiting, and the fog, the endless fog, was never truly gone. It would always be a part of this place, a part of the city, a part of me. I looked around the room, taking in the damage, the ruined altar, the scattered pages of the journal. The ritual had done what it needed to, but there was no victory in this.
No celebration.
Only a hollow sense of relief, mixed with a deep, gnawing dread. I wasn't the same as I had been when I entered this room. The fog, the creature beneath the city, the ritual, it had changed me. I felt it in my very bones, in the way the air felt, in the way the city itself felt. It was like the ground beneath my feet had shifted, like everything I knew had been redefined. I closed my eyes for a moment, allowing the silence to wash over me, to settle in. But no matter how still the world felt, no matter how calm the air, I couldn't escape the sense that something was still wrong. I had sealed away the shadow, yes, but I hadn't destroyed it. I hadn't killed it. And as much as I wanted to believe that the fog was gone forever, deep down I knew better. I pushed myself to my feet, my body aching as I stood. I had to leave this place. I had to move on. I couldn't stay here. Not with the weight of what I had done hanging over me. Not with the feeling of the fog still clawing at the edges of my mind. I turned, my eyes scanning the room one last time. The journal was still on the altar, the pages ruffled and torn from my frantic reading. The truth was there, buried in its pages, and I knew it wasn't finished. There was more to the story, more to the fog, to the creature, to the city. I walked toward the altar, my steps heavy, and reached down to grab the journal. It felt cold in my hands, colder than it had before, like it had absorbed something from the ritual. Something dark. I flipped through the pages, looking for anything that might give me an answer, anything that might tell me what came next. But the pages were blank. I froze, my heart racing in my chest. The journal, the very thing that had guided me through this whole mess, was empty. The pages, once filled with ancient text and arcane symbols, were now nothing but white. I turned the pages frantically, each one blank, each one devoid of meaning. The weight of the book in my hands suddenly felt unbearable, like it was nothing more than a hollow shell, a relic of something that no longer existed. But the mark on my wrist, it was still there. The pendant was still in my hand. The ritual had been real. The fog had been real. I dropped the book onto the altar and backed away, my mind spinning with confusion and fear. What had happened? What was going on? I could feel it again, the coldness in the air, the pull of the fog, the whispering in my mind. It was stronger now, louder. The creature, whatever it was, had left its mark on me. I could feel it inside me. I could feel its presence, its hunger. And then I heard it. A sound soft at first, like a distant hum, a whisper on the wind. But it grew louder, closer. The air around me seemed to warp, rippling with a dark energy. I turned, my eyes scanning the room, searching for the source of the noise. It was coming from behind me. I spun around, my heart leaping in my chest, and saw the shadow again. Not the fog, the thing emerging from the cracks in the walls, the floor, the very air itself. It was alive, alive in a way that the fog had never been. It was like a living creature made of pure darkness, a thing of nightmares that had been awakened and was now reaching for me, for my soul. I staggered back, fear rising in my throat. It had never really left, had it? Not really. The fog had been nothing more than a distraction, a shield, a barrier to keep the thing contained. And now I was its next target. The shadow stretched toward me, its form shifting and pulsating, like it was made of smoke, of broken dreams, of every dark fear that had ever lived in the city. I could feel it pulling me, pulling at the very fabric of my being, trying to draw me in, to consume me completely. But I fought. I fought with everything I had, with everything I had left in me. The mark burned on my wrist, hotter than ever, the pendant in my hand throbbing with power. The ritual hadn't been enough to destroy the creature, but it had given me something. It had given me a connection, a tether. I reached out with my mind, pulling at that tether, drawing on the power I had sealed within myself. I didn't know how, but I could feel it. Feel the ancient power, the dark force that was now a part of me, coursing through my veins. The fog, the shadow, the thing that had been locked beneath the city. It was all inside me now. I could feel it like an extension of myself, a part of me I had never asked for, but that had become mine nonetheless. And now I had to control it. The shadow recoiled for a moment, as if it felt the tug of my resistance, but it was only momentary. It came at me again, faster, fiercer, its hunger driving it forward, its form shifting into something more monstrous, more alive than I had ever imagined. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't keep it away forever, but I could slow it down. I could contain it. I closed my eyes, focusing, reaching for that connection I had forged during the ritual. I pulled on it, twisted it, forcing the shadow back. The air crackled with energy, and I felt my body tremble under the strain. I could feel the darkness pressing in from all sides, but I held on. I held on to that tether. And slowly, ever so slowly, the shadow began to recede. It fought me, screamed in my mind, but I kept pulling, kept forcing it back. It wanted to devour me, to consume me completely, but I wouldn't let it. Not again. Not now. And as the shadow shrank back, its form flickering and fading, I knew one thing for certain. It would never truly be gone. But as long as I held onto this connection, as long as I could control it, I would keep it contained. I would keep it locked away. For now, the shadow receded into the walls, its form dissipating into the cracks, into the very bones of the city. But I could still feel it. I could still feel the weight of its presence, like a distant hum deep in my chest, a constant reminder of what I had unleashed. It was still there, lurking in the dark corners of my mind, waiting for the moment I would let my guard down. And when that time came, when I faltered, it would be waiting to swallow me whole. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and tried to push the fear away. I couldn't allow myself to be consumed by it. Not again. Not after everything I had already sacrificed. I glanced around the room one last time, my eyes lingering on the remnants of the ritual. The altar, the broken journal, the pendant. The fog was gone, but it had left its mark on me. The mark on my wrist burned faintly, but it wasn't a burn of pain. It was the burn of power, of something darker than I had ever imagined. And I could feel that power growing within me, stirring beneath the surface, like a sleeping beast. I had made a choice when I completed the ritual. I had chosen to bind myself to the fog, to contain it, to keep it locked away. But in doing so, I had also bound myself to it. The thing beneath the city, the shadow that had always been there, hidden in the deepest corners of the world, was now a part of me, part of my soul, part of my fate, and I would never be free of it. I pushed the thought aside, standing shakily on my feet, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The city outside was still, as if holding its breath, waiting for the final end of this dark chapter. I needed to leave this place. I needed to go back to the world I had left behind, to face whatever was left of the city after all of this. But where could I go? The city had been shattered by the fog. The streets were empty, the buildings cracked and broken. What had once been a place of life was now a tomb, a husk, a shadow of what it had been. And I, in some way, was just as broken. I had done what I could, but it hadn't been enough. The fog had been contained, yes, but the shadow, the creature beneath it, had been freed. And that freedom came with a cost that I had to live with. The journal was gone now, its pages empty, its secrets hidden. But I knew there was more to this story, more that I didn't understand, more that I would never understand. I walked toward the door of the chamber, my legs heavy, my mind fogged with exhaustion. As I stepped out into the corridor, the air felt different, cooler, quieter. The fog, now nothing but a distant memory, had left a strange peace in its wake. But it was a fragile peace, one that could shatter at any moment. I emerged into the city, and the world seemed strangely still. The streets, once choking with fog, were now clear, the air crisp, almost too still. It was as though the city had exhaled after holding its breath for far too long. The buildings loomed around me, their windows empty, their faces weathered and broken, like the bones of something long forgotten. I could hear no sounds, no voices, no footsteps, just the whisper of the wind. I felt the weight of the silence settle over me like a shroud. The city was dead in every sense of the word. There was nothing left. No one left. Everyone who had lived here was either lost to the fog or had fled long ago, leaving behind a shell of a place that once pulsed with life. Now it was just a shadow of what it had been. I walked through the empty streets, the emptiness wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. It was unnerving, this silence. The fog had always been a presence, even if it was a terrifying one. But now that it was gone, now that the city had been left to decay in the wake of its passing, it felt empty, hollow. I walked toward the river, my destination clear. It had always been clear. The river had been the heart of the fog, the very source of the curse that had claimed this city. I had done what I could to seal it away, to contain it, but I knew better than anyone that it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The river stretched out before me, dark and still. I stood at its edge, looking out over the water, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on me. The fog had come from here, had taken root in the depths of the river. And now, as the water shimmered beneath the dying light of the sun, I knew that I had to confront it. There was no escape from this. There was no place I could go where the shadow wouldn't follow. I had made my choice. I had bound myself to the city, to its fate, to its darkness. And as much as I wanted to walk away, as much as I wanted to find peace, I knew there was no peace for me. There would never be peace. I knelt at the edge of the river, the water lapping at the shore, cold and unforgiving. The fog's power had been contained, but it wasn't gone. It would always remain. And so would the shadow, the creature beneath the city. And as long as I carried its mark, as long as I held the pendant, I would be bound to it, to the city's fate. I let out a slow breath, my heart heavy with the weight of what I had done, of what I had become. I had tried to save this place. I had tried to fight the fog, to stop the creature beneath the river. But in the end, all I had done was make myself a part of it. I closed my eyes and leaned forward, letting the cool water slip over my fingers. I felt the pull of it, the pull of the shadow, as if it were calling me. It wanted me to join it, to embrace its darkness. But I wouldn't, couldn't, not again. The creature beneath the city would wait. It would always wait. But for now it was contained. For now the city was safe. For now I had done what I could. But I knew that there would always be a price. There would always be a cost. And I was the one who would pay it. I stood up slowly, taking one last look at the city that had been my home, the city that had become a prison. There was no going back. The fog was gone, yes, but its shadow would linger forever. And so would I,